So on their shirts, I don't know if y'all can see it. We have to maybe I get to zoom in on Tai shirt here, but it says you can't ... but we already did.
Well, it's the definition of creative resistance. Like we've presented this multiple times to different orgs and different groups, and then we're restricted by rules and regulations and institutions. Like you can't do that. You can't just be painting walls. But our people have always been doing it. Well, it's in the tools. It's in the weapons that we have to protect ourselves. Like we dress ourselves in art, and like it's healing. It is. Like we've already been doing this. Like you can't tell us not to do this. That's where that comes from.
Hamadakyapi, Nick Tilson, Amachapi, Chantea Washdenape Chuzapalo. My name is Nick Tilson, and I'm your host for LANDBACK For The People. As you know, or as you may not know, this podcast is dedicated to uplifting and telling the stories of the LANDBACK movement, and which is a movement for Indigenous liberation. It's a movement that is about the returning of Indigenous lands back into Indigenous hands, but at the same time, dismantling the power structures that made it possible for the stealing of our land in the first place, which are huge in this movement, whether it be the legal system, the political system, the financial system. Most of these systems that are currently in place have been put in place to maintain the theft of our lands, to extract resources from our communities, and to violate our human rights. And so this LANDBACK For The People show is about uplifting the stories of what Indigenous people are doing across Turtle Island to reclaim their power and reclaim their identity and reclaim their homelands. And in this episode of the LANDBACK For The People podcast, we are going to talk about arts in action. We're going to talk about the role that creative resistance plays in building the LANDBACK movement. And this is really a topic that hits home to me as somebody who has been organizing on the front lines for quite some time, because the origins of the LANDBACK movement come directly from the front lines. In fact, the LANDBACK movement did not come from a think tank. It did not come from philanthropy. It didn't come from a marketing firm. It came directly from those of us who've been on the front lines fighting transnational corporations, fighting colonial governments that were building pipelines through our lands, that were doing mining on our homelands, that were doing projects that polluted our water, that violated our rights as a people. And, you know, the better part of a decade ago, many of us are sitting on the front lines saying, wouldn't it just be better if we got our land back? If we had our land back, then they would need our consent to go through our homelands, and we wouldn't even have to be here fighting this fight. And so out of those, it was in that spirit that LANDBACK, the narrative and the movement was born. And it was born out of that. And then you started seeing some of the main interpreters of that movement were our artists, were our culture bearers, were our folks who made our banners, who made our patches, who helped being the communicators of what it was and what it is we are fighting for. And so you started seeing like such a generation of all kinds of powerful LANDBACK art. You started seeing it show up in everything because we found ways to connect LANDBACK art and the LANDBACK narrative and the LANDBACK movement to so many of the issues that we were facing with. as a people. And so this show, we're going to dive into talking about a little bit about the history of the land back movement and its cross intersection with art. We're going to have some awesome guests on here who do creative resistance in art and action all the time. Some awesome artists in Wagoner, Jaque Fragua, Tytianna Harris, who are part of the creative resistance teams here at NDN Collective, but also have been long parts of this movement long before they were here. And I think the thing to remember about art and culture as it comes from Indigenous people is it's our connection. The artists are like the interpreters of what is happening in the present, but it's connecting the ancestors to our movement. And it's also putting an imprint on what is possible for the future. And so, like, art has become such a fundamental part of how we communicate our message within our movements. It has become a fundamental part of how we organize our communities and our people. It is a fundamental part of how we motivate people to build movements and to fight for struggles that they can see themselves in. It's part of what makes our movements cool and makes people feel a part of something. And most importantly, is that it plays a role of catalyzing our message out there so that we can use our message and we can use our art to influence decision makers that are making decisions over the lives and lands of Indigenous people. And if you look at every single time there has ever been a successful movement in Indian country, art and culture bearers played a role in it. They played a role in helping anchor that movement. They played a role in helping communicate that message, whether it be through banners, whether it be through social media, whether it be through film, whether it be through wheat pasting, whether it be through all different elements. And the folks on the show today have a vast different range of experiences and knowledge of that body of work. And so we're going to begin to dig into it. I ask folks to lean into this as we build the land back movement, as we continue to amplify the land back movement. We will continue to resist and we will continue to lean in on the use of our art, and we'll continue to lean in on the use of our culture, our spirituality, because this movement is tied directly to who we are and our identity as Indigenous people. All right, we are here with LANDBACK For The People. And in this episode, we are continuing to talk about creative resistance and the role of arts in our movement to create positive change in the world, to stand up for our people, and to fight for our homelands. And we have three awesome people and comrades here. In true Indian way, we are going to have them introduce themselves, and we're actually going to start off with Tytianna Harris first.
All right. Hello. My name is Tytianna Harris. She, her pronouns. I'm an action coordinator on the Creative Resistance team. She Diné Diné Bashes Chin Dolok Diné Dashache Donakai Legion Dashanele. Natas on Dena Shah. Yeah, I reside in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Thanks for coming on to the show. Next, we're going to come over here to our brother Sai.
Yante Arnold. She'ayad Zelwan Deschin in Islam, Ashin Bashichin, Yaitachin National, and Nash Dajkopai Dashache. Mutai the Nanshlim. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Creative Resistance Director with NDN Collective, and I'm glad to be here.
Thanks for being on the show, Sai. We're going to come on over to Brother Jaque and have you introduce yourself and where you're from.
Right on. Thanks, Nick. My name's Jaque Fragua. I'm from Jemez, Pueblo, New Mexico. He, him pronouns, and I am the Creative Resistance Coordinator here at NDN.
Famous Jemez. So it's good to have all three of you on the show. We're going to just kind of jump right into it. And all three of you have been around in this movement for a little while. I'm not going to age anybody. But I've been around this movement for a while, and this movement, really started like catching fire around LANDBACK. And so I'm going to start with you, Jaque, about when was the first time you started to hear people say LANDBACK? And when you first started kind of hearing those words land and back together, when did you first hear that? And what did it mean to you?
Land back and backland inverse. No, I started hearing this maybe around Standing Rock, around that time. It just started to percolate, I think, in people's minds about what we really were fighting for, and there had been many obviously struggles up until that point, and coalesced in that whole moment, and I think most people were starting to see what the essentials were of these struggles, and I think the tie-in was land, right? And something that I think I noticed visually was a lot of the conversation was being tied back to rights and inherent rights, Aboriginal rights, to our original homelands, sacred sites, and the artwork really spoke about these elements, these natural elements, the earth, and not so much as a privatization of land, but the steward, who are the original stewards, and looking in the mirror, it's us. So that's when I started hearing about that concept or those words put together. And for me, I'm a very word centric person. I started with graffiti, so these letters started to pop up in a lot of different spaces, and it just looked good together, If anything, if it didn't mean anything, it looked great. And for us,
It's a place to start anyway, right?
Yeah, for creative resistance, that's what we're always kind of like pivoting back to, is not only do we want to make things meaningful, but we want to make them look sexy at the same time.
So we keep making these references to like creative resistance, and you guys, all three of you, have these cool creative resistance shirts on and everything. What is that for folks that are listening, watching? They didn't come on this podcast to learn what creative resistance is. They came here because they're creating a revolution. What does that mean, Sai? What is creative resistance?
I think it's I think the term, at least for me, found its way into my life, doing this kind of work, being a part of movements and actions, and then in the work that I do, whether it was contract or whether it was on full time, it was just in the movement, and it was a thing already. And I think it's a more detailed term than just arts and activism, arts and action. These are some of the terms that people have been using. But creative resistance really brings encompasses all the tactics and how to make an action effective, how to creatively come up with kind of setting the bar each time. And one thing might work at one point and with one issue at this time, but then you do that over and over, it's not gonna be effective. So you have to creatively together think about what's strategically the most effective way to tell the story, the way it should be told by people. And I think it really kind of really sets the tone for folks and in the movement, Because in the end of the day, whether we're artists or not, when we put ourselves in those situations on the front line, as casual or as serious it may be, you got to be problem solving those scenarios with your people. But you're also using your brain, using each other to overcome an obstacle. I think that's what that really means.
Absolutely. So, Tytianna, what does LANDBACK mean to you, like personally? And then also, like, what does it mean to you at being in the area of creative resistance? But we'll start the first part first. Like, what does that mean to you personally?
Yeah, LANDBACK to me is definitely like a verb, a form of action, just kind of encompassing the return of our land, which also means our language, culture, could be family time. And within that, like LANDBACK is also an exertion of our autonomy. So I think that it's something that we can all relate to with the preservation of our culture, no matter like what region we're from here in the U.S. or across the world. I think
It's so crazy because like I think to us like it's just like we see it connected. Like land is interweaving and food systems and economy and culture and language, and so when we try to separate those things, it always feels weird, like it's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. So I definitely agree that LANDBACK doesn't mean like maybe just the actual giving of land back, even though it does encompass that, but it also includes like everything else that is embodied in our culture and the land and the air and the water. And so, and, putting all that back into indigenous hands and,
So for some folks folks who don't know, and the folks who are afraid of heights, Tytianna actually got to be a part of a really powerful action a few years ago that took place right here in Minnelusaha, in the Black Hills, where a huge banner was an upside-down American flag with LANDBACK written on it, but it was hung from this grain silo in downtown Rapid City. And Tytianna climbed all the way to the top of there and helped hang this banner. What was that like? Being one asked to do that, and then like showing up here and throwing down and climbing up that.
Yeah, so I guess like prior to creative resistance or prior to my work here at NDN, I have some background in climbing with other nonprofits and other orgs. And so I got a call one day in the evening and from some very trustworthy friends that asked me to come out and be a part of this action that I had no specifics on. So I knew it involved some climbing and some healthy risk taking. So I came out and was a part of a very like well thought out plan to hang a flag up, American flag upside down in correlation to the LANDBACK campaign. And it was a part of the strategy. It was a part of the work that the LANDBACK campaign was had going on. So it was fun. It was great. I knew exactly what I was getting into, and it was awesome seeing all the participation from all angles. Even if you weren't a climber, there was different roles and people taking part. So we all made that happen, and it turned out amazing. It was successful, and we hung the flag, and everyone got to see in Rapid City. So it was awesome to see all the Native people out there just really excited, and I think it really helped amplify people's thoughts toward what's going on here in Rapid City and just like in all cities with racism and discrimination and yeah.
I remember that. I mean, being from somebody who is here in this community and, us putting up with what we have to put up with in this community and trying to think about creative approaches to get our message out there. And I remember that night being like a very uplifting night where that action happened. People singing songs. It was a celebratory thing. But also, I mean, the history, of why hang a flag upside down, as a symbol of distress and a symbol of distress, a symbol of resistance, and to have the flag upside down and then land back right side up. Um, you know, I don't know from a distance, Jake. You weren't there that night of that action, but when you seen that action roll out and you seen the land back with the American flag upside down and land back right side up, just as somebody who's in the movement in the field, like what did you kind of take away from that?
Oh well, I was super jealous that I wasn't a part of that action.
FOMO? You was having
I
FOMO?
had some FOMO.
Hey.
Yeah, definitely.
I think some people tried calling, but
yeah, no, I definitely had the FOMO, and I wanted to be a part of that. As right as soon as I seen the pictures, I knew it was going to be amazing and badass, just because of the experience and the previous work that had been done with all the folks involved. So, when I did see it, it was powerful. Not only I've never seen a flag that big hung that way, and the fact that it had land back on it was it was just like, why didn't we think of doing that before? And therein lies like the power behind creative resistance is we get better every single time. We the more minds we have, the more creativity, the more imagination we have, the more solutions we have. And really that's what it comes down to. It's not really per se about art or the visual aesthetics. It's really about people power and creatively problem solving. And that's what I saw in that situation was badass skill sets being put to a good cause. Yeah.
I didn't think about it that way. So if I don't know how the Guinness Book of World Record keeps track of things, but if you're out there and you're watching LANDBACK for the People show, we might have been a part of hanging the biggest upside down American flag in the history of the world. Just saying. Anyway, just saying. I just I put that into perspective, and it was badass. Sai, what is your favorite thing about creative resistance, and what is like your what's been one of your favorite sort of movement moments that where creative resistance has played a fundamental role?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think in terms of creative resistance, the events that we do, the support that we do, the trainings that we run, and the bigger projects that we accomplish, it's great that you're a part of a camp. It's great that you're part of some action. It's awesome you did that. But I think creative resistance holds this deeply rooted traditional value of teaching. We did this. Yeah, we did. Yeah, we hung that flag. But who learned that? Who learned how to do that along the way? And so I think this really makes us different, is that we're really trying to bring the next generation or the same generation to the level that we are at, or to the level of understanding of what creative resistance is and the importance behind it. And so carrying people with you and shadowing and learning right beside you is like the really important thing. And I love I set forth out in college to become a teacher, and it didn't work out. But I do have a passion for teaching, and that.
You became a teacher.
Yet I'm teaching still, and teaching what I love, and teaching for the people, right? And in the ways that I have freedom and control with my colleagues and my family and my relatives, and I think that's beautiful, because that really was never a thing in the mainstream movement. Is that like art was always treated as like this like thing in the background, like that wasn't like, where's the art? Let's put this stress and this overwhelming task to this artist the night before the action. The paint is drying and people are going to the street, and then we're paying them like pizza or undercompensating these talents that you're trying to bring in. And so I saw that firsthand where the movement was burning bridges with our creative individuals. And no one people were like, I don't want to work with that group. I don't want to work with these individuals. And so that needed to change. And so I helped create a network and then carry that dialogue in a larger conversation about like how we need to put art at the forefront. We should be sitting at the table when we're planning, we're at the beginning. So we all know like how long it's going to take and what are the moving parts that need to happen. And so I think all of it has been the best part from the beginning and finding my journey, my way through this process. And it's the best job I've ever had. I can see this going further on, it doesn't seem like it's going to slow down anytime soon.
I don't think so. I don't think we're slowing down anytime soon. Before we keep on jumping into more questions, some people who've been tuning in to the LANDBACK For The People podcast may have noticed we got a little fancier here because we have this awesome wheat paste collaboration that we did. And because we have Jaque on the show, this was a collaboration between me, Jaque, Willi. Steph contributed some ideas to it. And this is actually like a piece, like it's a good example of creative resistance. And so I wanted to hand it over to Jaque for a minute to kind of talk a little bit about this collaboration that we did here in this mural that we have going on right here in the studio.
Yeah, so one day I was emailed about, hey, we should really turn this thing, up a notch, and Nick had some ideas about, yeah, I want land back for the people, and maybe it's a mural, maybe it's graffiti, maybe it's who knows what it is. But after a few conversations, we decided to use wheat paste as the medium, and we had these ideas of like the imagery we wanted to convey. Clearly, it's this like constitutional rhetoric, and you can see the calligraphy and all that. Turned it in black and white. But the one thing that we really wanted to capture in the whole composition was all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. That was the one essential tidbit that we wanted to capture from this whole imagery. And
that part was so important because that's the main part of Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution. A lot of folks don't realize that the U.S. Constitution literally states that treaties are the supreme law of the land. So this wasn't our edits. This was lifted directly from the Constitution. And that's important because almost every single one of those treaties has been violated. And that means every single treaty that has ever been violated is actually a violation of the U.S. Constitution. And so I think about that all the time every time anybody vows, they pull their hand on the Bible, which I don't know why they do that, but they put their hand on the Bible and then they get sworn into office, or they become a cop, or they become a judge, or they become whoever. And they're vowing and swearing to uphold, the Constitution of the United States. And so I think that was the other, really important part of this. One of the creative things I thought was pretty awesome is, in the Bill of Rights, in the Constitution, it says "we the people," yet it has all these contradictory things. And Jaque changed it over here, if you notice, to "for the people." Do you want to talk a little bit just about that inspiration behind that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the podcast is literally for the people, but I think thinking on a conceptual level, it reminds me of Zapatista quote. I think it goes something like, "For everyone, everything, but for us, nothing." And that's kind of that's how I feel about that saying right there. Is like we're putting all this work in, not because we're doing it for ourselves, but it's for the future. It's for our families. It's for our communities. And instead of thinking about us all the time, it's this work that we're putting forth is, like Sai was mentioning, these are skills, and this is information that we're providing for the community, and our loved ones, our people. And so even just this conversation, this dialogue, this is all for folks to extract and learn from. And that's what I hope we're doing with Creative Resistance. And this mural, obviously, is like a testament to that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I appreciate doing it because as a person who's the host of this show, but like as an organizer, as an activist, I always have a bunch of ideas, but I'm always like trying to figure out how do I turn those ideas into something. And so this is who I call. It's the people sitting around this table and other folks that help interpret that. That's why I always say like the most powerful thing about like creative resistance is it's the interpreter of ideas. It's the interpreter of what's happening in our society. Mm-hmm. And if you think about in all of our cultures, there has always been the culture bearers and the interpreters of our culture are some of the ways that the world even know about it. And so it fits so hand in glove with what's happening in the world. And so I appreciate the work that you put in on this and the collaboration. And, for some people who don't know too, he's behind the scene at the moment. But one of the producer of this podcast, Willi White, actually produced this graphic right here that says LANDBACK on it. I think he produced it in like one day or less, because we were getting ready for an action and we wanted to find a way to show LANDBACK. And so this was actually hand drawn by Willi White, part of our team here. And we never wrote that because because LANDBACK was something that was going to be owned by the people, not to be copywritten, not to be, shared. So people are using this all over the place. And to have this actual font was actually to be used. It was created for an action in the Black Hills about the return of sacred lands here. That's the origin of that. So we're gonna keep on going here. I'm actually gonna have ask Tytianna a question here about what's a favorite creative resistance or action story that you have?
A favorite story? It's really hard for me to pinpoint one. I mean, we've definitely done a lot of work this year and even beyond this year. But I think I feel like it's pretty similar to after every action and after every event that we get to take part of in the art build or the actual action or the facilitation of our creative resistance programs is just seeing the work that we put in through the visuals be out there in the media and the message being relayed to people. And
does it make you feel proud?
Yeah,
hey, we put all this work in, and then holy shit, it's on the New York Times and shit.
Yeah, it does. And I think that's a part of our goal with creative resistance is how to engage people with what's happening in the movement and how to make art that speaks in a very simple and beautiful way. So it's really awesome when we can come up with concepts and strategize in a very effective way. And so, it will be captured by media and people will see from our community and beyond. And yeah.
Absolutely. So, Sai, what about you? If you were going to pick out of all these different actions that you've been a part of, and this guy's propelled off of Mount Rushmore and did all kinds of crazy shit. You should Google him because his introduction didn't do him justice. But yeah, what would be one of the actions or memorable acts of creative resistance that you were a part of or remember?
There's a lot of like when you get put in a situation and you're out in a rural area where there's no water or no resource, no art studio, and you're given the task of like doing the visuals and just you have to MacGyver it. You know, you hand draw.
Wait
something.
a second. Are you the Indian MacGyver?
I hope not. And the Indian me. And you know, using bed sheets and spray can and just freehanding with your friends that know how to write, and that's what makes the party, right? That also makes the movement. There's so many of those. There's so many. You just can't handpick anything. But I think the one that really stands out the most, I think, just because I did a little time for it, and was an action in Chicago where we climbed a 450-foot smokestack, and we painted literally quit coal on it because of how it was destroying communities there.
You painted what on it?
Quit coal on a smokestack.
Quit coal, like
Yeah, from top to bottom, and it was, the community was like suffering from asthma. There was cancer rates are really high, and the community had done everything legally and by the books, and it was just time to escalate. And so there was 2 major coal stacks downtown Chicago, and we were given a task to do this impossible task, and went up there with non-artists and just coordinated this whole thing, and with a little bit of practice, and I managed to do it. And it was like a 2-year fight, and then finally they closed down through court, and that was really like, you do a lot of actions, you do a lot of different events, and you always question yourself like whether it was effective or not. But like that one specifically, that 2 coal stacks shut down, and they're no longer burning coal in that community. And so that was really memorable and very, very popular. It was 8 of us that went up there, and it's pretty awesome.
wow, that's an incredible story. Thanks for sharing that. Jake, what about you? You've been around. Jake's been around for a minute. Just saying that, doing actions and throwing down. What is the favorite creative resistance story that you have?
Sai just reminded me of something, and it's definitely a favorable moment. But I think it was this time when we were sort of just kind of landing in Standing Rock, and everything was kind of like, you know, people were setting up still. You know, people were setting up camps, and you know, I got there really late, and then it was just so funny because Sai was like, "Hey, we got some art to make." And it was like 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. And it's like, all right, let's do this. And
Wait, so you were like last minute, late at night, under-resourced, hungry,
Cold.
and probably thirsty and cold.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just remember it being cold as fuck. And
And dark.
There's no lights. So it was
Even the headlamps were dim.
It was bare bones. We only had like 200 lumens, you know, headlamps. You know, it was the beginning of a lot of things. But to be there with just these core people that I've worked with for a long time up until that point, and putting our minds together to figure out how are we gonna make this happen. You know, there's a ask, there's a demand, and there's an quote unquote action happening, and this is the beginning of a lot of things here for this movement, especially visually. So let's figure that out. And we put our resources together. We stayed up all night. We hammered it out. We were, you know, there's paint flying, there's spray going everywhere, and there's, you know, a boom box blasting, and we got this shit done. And that was one of my favorite moments is like the camaraderie in that, you know, and knowing like they can depend on me and I can depend on them, and we can get this thing done, regardless of the resources, regardless of like all the things that we have now, you know, especially here at NDN, working under the action team department, and like just being, I don't know, it's just like this amazing trajectory of not only knowledge, that we've accumulated over the years, but just like the also the tools, not only material but conceptual, intellectual, and so that was definitely one of the brightest moments for me. And who, at that time, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know that all this art would be pushed out of that, that tent that we set up that night. And years later, you look back, you see the artwork that came from that tent was, it's New York Times, like you're saying, it's out in the world, on front of newspapers, it's in the media, and it's like, the spirit of whatever that was that night that was the spark for a lot of things visually for Standing Rock. So that was one of my favorite moments.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to shift gears a little bit. I love talking story and hearing these stories. So we're going to shift gears because in doing direct action and organizing in this movement and doing creative resistance, sometimes we have bloopers or we have funny shit that happens when we're organizing against some really serious adversaries. And I'm going to share mine, a quick story, and I want us to do a quick round robin. But the thing that inspired this question was just that real recently we had a mobilization this summer. We had a mobilization this summer that was about calling out, the police here in the Rapid City community. Because there's been 7 deaths of people here in this community since the death of George Floyd, all at the hands of police, all of them being Native people. So we're organizing and bringing to light what's happening. And we had an amazing art build that you all were a part of. The community was a part of it. Local organizers played a role in it. There's all this beautiful art that was made. And then we got down to where we were getting ready to do the action. We're getting down to getting ready to deploy. And all of a sudden, everybody says, "Where's the art? You got the art?" "No, I thought you said you had the art." No, you said you were grabbing the art. You said you got the trailer. So-and-so said they had the trailer. We literally showed up down there. There's an entire trailer of art somewhere, but it was not on the front line where we needed it. So that was a crazy story, a reminder. And then Sai reminded us. He said, "Well, that's a good lesson because we're probably never going to forget the art ever again."
That's very true. It's true.
So yeah, I don't know, Sai, did you have a story, or did Jake? Do you have a story?
I was going to say, I thought hoka meant hook up the trailer.
Yeah, I thought I was the coda for hook it up.
Oh, so you're blaming it on the Lakotas. I see what's going on here.
I was like, oh, they got it.
But yeah, that literally did happen.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, another blooper that you can think about.
Yeah, like when we're training and teaching people, in my experience, like anything in an action that can go wrong will go wrong, along with the things you may prepare for. But there are always some things that you can never. The powers that be just make it happen, and so problem solving has to take over. The same action I was a part of, I mentioned my favorite. We had practice for like hours and hours and hours. We had all this gear on us. It was like there was like 8 of us. There was like 1,000 pounds worth of gear. We had to get onto the stack, and we had to get reach the ladder, and we were practicing like to the point where we were like, when we get there, you're gonna start with your right foot, your left, and you're gonna grab, and you're gonna like go and do this, and we'll clip all our stuff together. You got, we were trying to get 10 seconds less, and we were just like getting exhausted and tired. And our crew was split into 4 and 4, and my crew went around the back, and we were supposed to reach this. It was out of reach, this ladder, and we were preparing to hook something on it and climb this caving ladder on it. And so when we got there, the ladder was all the way on the ground, so we never even needed a clip on up high. And the guy in front, who was like, let's break the record, just like jumped on the on the ladder and started climbing. And this really, really heavy 100-pound pack, and like just with his arms and legs. And we all look at each other like, what the hell? Like that, all the planning just went out the window, and this guy's just like hand over arms, just like trying to climb, and then just burns himself out. But we at the bottom, continued our plan, clipped in our lines, set up a pulley, and started hauling our gear up. But homeboy was up there like exhausted because his arms probably lost all the blood to his arms. But yeah, you can prepare and train, and it's always like when the adrenaline runs and kicks in, you just like things happen. So it's pretty hilarious. That's my story.
Oh, that's a good one. Do you have one that you think about, a blooper?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you order the wrong fabric and the banner is only supposed to weigh like 30 pounds and it ends up weighing like 90 pounds.
Oh, no way. When did this happen?
This is the LANDBACK banner.
The flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that why we've seen some of the climbers struggling? Well, maybe not some. There was one. There was one climber that was struggling as they were going up that. I remember rooting for them. That's why it was so heavy, because it was just a different pound fabric.
Yeah. I don't know.
Online orders.
Oh.
Like, that's what happens.
Somebody got their hamstring pulled that night. That's for sure.
Something pulled.
This is good stuff. I mean, I think that one of the most important parts of our movement is to make sure that our message continues to get out in a clear, concise way, because otherwise people do not know why we are organizing. People don't always know why we're protesting. And I know it feels so deflating sometimes, because people are like, oh, what are you protesting again? What are you protesting about? The role of creative resistance is that, and I always do this to like test. I'm like, well, what do you think it was about? What do you think this protest was about? And you send them a bunch of pictures and remind them what it was about, or remind them. And it's always the art. I mean, it's the art and the people's faces and their bodies. And that's the thing I've always loved about nonviolent direct action in the world of trying to create change, that no matter who we're fighting against, no matter whether it be, colonial governments or the most powerful corporations that have ever been assembled in the world, we as a people, and the people, can use our bodies. We can use our bodies. We can use who we are to protect ourselves, to stand up for ourselves and our land and our people. But when you combine that with creative approaches to it too, I have always said that some of the most powerful actions are ones that feel like ceremonies, ones that have preparation done into them. If we don't treat our ceremonies halfway, let's don't treat our actions halfway. And the times that we've been able to be part of actions that have felt like ceremonies, to me, it's like a reflection of that we're in the right pathway, that we're creating a space that our ancestors would be proud of, that they want us to be in. And therefore they're here. They showed up. They're a part of this. They see themselves in this art. They're inspired by what we are doing and the stances we are making. And so, the artist, culture bearers, creative resistance is the mechanism to do that. People would probably globally would not even understand or know about our movement if we didn't have powerful art to tell the story. And I think that is that's been one of the foundational parts of this movement, but it's also part of the future and how we're continuing to craft what that vision, what that future looks like. And you all are a part of doing that, not just here at NDN Collective, but all over throughout the country. This team has been doing wheat pasting projects. This team has been doing training in Alaska, in Hawaii, in the Southwest, in different places to help build up the capacity of our movement and our people to do creative resistance. So thank you all for being on the show, and we'll have you back. We'll have you all back again sometime too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You can't, but
We already
Oh yeah,
did.
before we end, what's that about? So on their shirts, I don't know if y'all can see it. We have to maybe I get to zoom in on Tai shirt here, but it says you can't ... but we already did.
Well, it's a definition of creative resistance. Like we've presented this multiple times to different orgs and different groups, and then we're restricted by rules and regulations and institutions. Like you can't do that. You can't just be painting walls. But our people have always been doing it. Well, it's in the tools. It's in the weapons that we have to protect ourselves. Like we dress ourselves in art, and like it's healing. It is. Like we've already been doing this. Like, you can't tell us not to do this. That's where that comes from.
You can't, but we already did. See you on the street, everybody on the front lines. Doksha, okay. All right. Good one.
Awesome.
That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
We gotta do it again. We need a bigger table.